All right, good afternoon, and welcome to our afternoon budget hearing here in the Appropriations Committee for the House. This afternoon, we have the honor of being joined by our state's treasurer, Stacey Garrity, who will provide budget testimony on behalf of the state's Treasury. Treasurer Garrity, welcome to this chamber. Before we begin, Chairman Treasury, any introductory comments?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Harris, and welcome to you all. We look forward to hearing your testimony this afternoon. In the governor's budget request, well, the budget for last year, just to put this out for people who are listening and may not have the numbers, the Treasury's budget last year was roughly about $1.1 billion. Your request in October was $1.34 billion, but the governor's proposal is $1.47 billion, and it's my understanding that includes $317 million in debt service. So lay those numbers out there, and we can move forward with the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Madam Treasurer, if you would start by introducing those who are at the table with you. At the conclusion of those introductions, we'll swear everyone in, and then we'll get started.
Is this on? Oh, okay. So to my right is my Chief Counsel, Christopher Craig, and to my left is Deputy Treasurer of Fiscal Operations, Charles Zogby.
Thank you. Would everyone please stand so we can swear you in? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, so help you God? You may be seated. Treasurer, you want to begin with an opening statement?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Chairman Harris, Chairman Struzzi, and members of the House Appropriations Committee, it is great to be with you here this afternoon. As State Treasurer, I have had the pleasure of getting to know many members of the General Assembly, including many members of this committee. It's been rewarding to work with you in a variety of ways, whether that's putting our heads together on legislation we know will make a difference in the lives of Pennsylvanians, or partnering together for outreach opportunities in your district to help with your constituent services. Last session, I was so proud to partner with legislators from both parties on several exciting new laws like Act 123 of 2024, championed by Representative Briggs and Senator Hutchinson, which improves the tax appeals process with the Board of Finance and Revenue, which is administered by Treasury, and Act 56 of 2024, which improves the tax code to include a tax credit for Pennsylvania businesses who help their employees save with PA 529 and PA ABLE. This was co-sponsored by Representative Marcel and Representative Friel. And by the way, I am thrilled that Pennsylvania is leading the way as the first state in the nation to offer this type of credit for an ABLE program. With this credit, we're not only helping Pennsylvanians save for education and disability expenses, but we're giving businesses a tool to attract the workers they need. Also included in the tax code is a provision originally introduced in legislation sponsored by Representative Scott that allows funds in a PA 529 plan to be rolled over to a Roth IRA without any state tax implications. This is fantastic and expands the flexibility of PA 529 savings even more. And thanks to the unanimous support from the General Assembly for Pennsylvania Money Match, for the first time ever, we're returning certain unclaimed property to hardworking Pennsylvanians automatically. That means no more searching for property and no filling out a claim form. And thanks to former Senator DeSanto, Representatives Bizzarro, Representative Brown, Chairman Samuelson and Greiner, I really appreciate their great work on this legislation that actually removes red tape from government. How great is that? Act 65 of 2024, which was sponsored by Representative Cerisi, is another great improvement for unclaimed property program. It expands the lists of heirs that can claim money on behalf of a deceased relative, reconnecting more Pennsylvanians with money that's rightfully theirs. These are tremendous examples of legislation that made it across the finish line because of cooperation with lawmakers from both sides of the aisle who work together. Thank you. I have some great news to share this year out of Treasury. First, I am happy to report that the PA 529 College and Career Savings Program investment plan received its second consecutive gold rating from Morningstar, ranking it again as one of the very best PA 529 plans in the nation. This is fantastic news for the Pennsylvania families using the PA 529 AP to save for education. PA Able, which helps our friends, families, and neighbors with disabilities save without impacting important benefits, continues to see tremendous growth. Since I took office, assets have more than tripled to over $150 million, and the number of accounts have more than doubled, with more than 10,000 PA Able accounts open today. PA Able is the largest member of a 19-state alliance, with our assets accounting for 25% of total assets under management. And this just goes to show the profound impact this program has right here in Pennsylvania. Another program I always talk about is unclaimed property. For the first time ever, Treasury returned more than $500 million to Pennsylvanians over 2 consecutive years. And last year, we paid the most claims ever in a single year. These accomplishments are due to your willingness to partner on constituent outreach. Thank you, and I can't wait to work with you all in the years ahead on ways to continue to improve the programs for every Pennsylvanian. The Commonwealth is more prepared than ever with our robust rainy day fund. This is thanks to consecutive years of smart decisions by the General Assembly, including last year's $737 million deposit. And we also saw an additional $50 million in savings in earnings due to a new investment strategy for the rainy day fund that my team implemented in October of '23. Without this change, we wouldn't have seen this boost. Treasury serves as the state's fiscal watchdog, overseeing more than $170 billion in assets, and keeps the state running by processing more than 1.7 million payments every month. That's 3 payments a second. So looking forward, I am optimistic that we will be able to continue to work together to best serve Pennsylvanians in every corner of the state. The governor's proposed budget for Treasury is a fiscally prudent one and aligns with what I believe my agency needs to maintain current operations on behalf of Pennsylvania taxpayers and provides the necessary funding to implement the new legislative initiatives I mentioned. I know we can position our state for great success. My door is always open to discuss ways you think we can accomplish this goal together. And with that, I'm happy to answer your questions. Thank you, Chairman Harris.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. We're going to start Representative DeVanzo.
Thank you, Chairman Harrison. Thank Madam Treasurer and your staff here for taking some time here today. During the governor's budget address, he stated that he directed the budget secretary to conduct a comprehensive review of every program we offer in the Commonwealth to identify efficiencies and costs that we can eliminate. The initiative is also known as REMAP. It is incorporated into the budget proposal by sunsetting programs that don't work and simply aren't necessary. I understand your department wasn't part of the initial review, but I just have a question of, have you did any internal reviews of the programs, eliminated some things? If you could just touch on that.
Sure, and thanks for that question, Representative. So thank you for asking about Treasury's continuous improvement approach and our relationship to the governor's initiatives. My office has not been contacted by the governor regarding REMAP. However, I am pleased to share with you that Treasury has accomplished 87 different initiatives to modernize and simplify our internal processes, reduce cost, provide more efficient administration, and just create an overall better customer experience. So I'll just give you a few examples. These initiatives include steps like the first ever review of all Treasury regulations, implementing ACH for all TAP payments to our state system universities, ACH payments for over 85% of our vendors, and redesigning our unclaimed property form to make it easier for holders and to file claims. In addition to the 87 simplification projects, we completed 15 lean projects over the past 2 years. And again, just focused on process improvements and efficiencies. We did a project to reduce the amount of return mail. We deployed technology to create a data lake to improve analytics, which saved many personnel hours, and we restructured our IT help desk. And that's just a few. I'm going to add that our Treasury's Bureau of Fiscal Review, they often identify areas of risk or improvement, and when we reach out to the administration like we did on abuses of the P card, they were very receptive to making improvements and adding controls. So I'll close with this. My office has worked also very closely with L&I to combat UC fraud, and we've clawed back just about $2 billion to date in fraudulent payments. But overall, with our cost savings initiatives, we estimate it's about $2.3 million annually in savings, but we're not going to stop there.
Thank you, and I know I do, and certainly my constituents appreciate you being a good steward for taxpayer dollars. The Fiscal Code of 1929, Article 3, tasks the Treasury Department with the deposit and investment of Commonwealth dollars. Madam Treasurer, other than the investment and reinvestment of Commonwealth dollars, can you give a brief overview of the duties of the Treasury Department?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, of course, yes, my duties are identified in the fiscal code, but you can think of me as the state's bank. So my primary duty is to be the watchdog for our over $170 billion in assets. Of that amount, we directly invest anywhere between $50 to $55 billion. I also run our consumer programs, so I run the PA 529, College and Career Savings Plan, PA ABLE, Unclaimed Property, Keystone Scholars, Invest, which is it's a local pool for local governments and nonprofits. And we have a Bureau of Investigations that we look at. We have the Transparency Portal, and I sit on 17 boards and commissions, including the big ones are PSERS, SERS, PEMERS.
Appreciate everything your office does. Like I said, I know my constituents do. Thank you for your questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Friel.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Secretary Garrity, for coming in today. I want to go back, and I was very happy to work with you last year on the 529 accounts legislation that we passed. And part of that was we were looking at the cost of college is rising. We know that families are struggling to put money away and save. We also know our businesses are, looking at workforce development and how do we provide our small businesses and businesses out there with tools to retain and attract employees. So I thought this was a good piece of legislation, but I don't know that everybody knows what the benefits of the 529 accounts are to families. And I was wondering if, you could talk a little bit about the success of the accounts for families and what they actually do and provide our Pennsylvania.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Representative Friel. And first, I want to thank you again, as well as Representative Kristen Marcel, for your leadership on the issue of getting that employer tax credit promotion. It's fantastic. I'm thrilled the credit is now a reality because it not only helps Pennsylvanians save more for their future education, but it also makes employers more attractive places to work with the added benefit. So the PA 529 is the best way for parents to save for their children's education. So these accounts offer some great advantages to families because your money grows tax-free at both the state and the federal level. It's not subject to inheritance taxes, and it doesn't impact financial aid eligibility. And you know what? They're tax deductible up to $19,000 a year. So there's two plans. There's the GSP, which is a guaranteed savings option, and a lot of people like that because it lets you save for tomorrow's college expenses at today's rates without worrying about the ups and downs of the stock market. So if you save enough for a semester at one of the state universities today, you'll have enough money for a semester at that school in the future, no matter how much tuition goes up in the meantime. So as of February, families have saved about $8.4 billion for education, which is fantastic. So we have over 115,000 GSP accounts with almost $2.5 billion saved, and the investment plan, which is based on market returns, has almost 197,000 accounts and almost $5.9 billion saved. So thanks to the great investments by my office, we've been able to reduce fees in both the IP and the GSP offerings. So the GSP, the fees are basically zero. So we've waived fees for 3 years in a row, and that saves account holders about $6.5 million a year, and that's money that goes right back into their pockets. We've also cut fees for the IP 3 different times, and at the end of this fiscal year, we will have saved parents and hardworking grandparents $17 million, again, money that goes right back into their pockets. The other thing we did was we provided a $100 match to all PA 529 Guaranteed Savings Plan account owners who made qualifying contributions in November and December. And that was funded by GSP fund surplus earnings. I also should mention for the GSP that it is funded at 142.7%. That's just fantastic. So again, I mentioned in my opening remarks that the IP earned its second consecutive gold rating. So we were only 2 states in the nation to earn a gold rating 2 years in a row. And what Morningstar specifically said is that we have top-notch state oversight, and they praised Treasury for building an impressive record of governance and having well-defined plans for career development and succession. And they also recognized our low-cost offerings. So not enough people know about the PA 529, and I learned that very quickly when I took office. And so we have an outreach team. I myself go to all 67 counties every single year, and I talk about PA 529 everywhere I go. And I think a lot of people still have this perception that it's just for 4-year degrees. So I've tried to flip that script. And yeah, it is for 4-year degrees, but it's also for community colleges. It's for trade schools, technical schools, qualified apprenticeships, K through 12 tuition. So it's very, very broad. It's very flexible. My outreach team did 1,000 events in all 4 corners of the state, and they talk about PA 529 everywhere they go. So we're really trying to get the word out there.
Thank you, Secretary, for that very complete answer. I see my time is about to expire, so thank you, sir.
Thank the gentleman, Representative Krupa.
And thank you for being here to testify. Excuse me. So, key buzzwords right now are fraud, waste, and abuse. It's hot topics. Everybody's talking about how to try to eliminate government inefficiencies. But under your leadership, those are things that the PA Department of Treasury has been focused on for several years. According to your department's budget hearing documentation in 2021-2022, you evaluated functions and positions and reduced the department's requested complement from 322 employees to 307. Since then, you have upheld that 307 employees are sufficient to maintain the functions of the department, specifically through fiscal years 2025 to 2026. Despite your office's need for increases in personnel costs, everything's went up, right? I commend you for cost-cutting efforts and the ability to identify agency inefficiencies and appropriately act upon them to ensure Commonwealth tax dollars are being spent and managed appropriately. Can you explain the process that your department went through to make this decision?
Absolutely, and thanks for the question. So from my days in the private sector, because I did spend 3 decades there, we always looked at productivity improvements every single year, and we always had a list because you can always find productivity and efficiency in any operation. So we engaged in a really comprehensive modernization and simplification initiative, and I covered some of this with Representative DeVanzo's question on remap. But every single one of our bureaus, as part of their annual planning processes, they identify initiatives to reduce risk, improve customer service, and save money. And so, like I mentioned previously, we went through 87 simplification projects and 15 lean projects. So in one bureau, through the investment in technology solutions, we were able to redeploy personnel to another area where we had a little bit of a greater need. And then in another bureau, through evolution of technology, we were able to transition 2 employees to a higher level of activity, which really provided much greater value to the Commonwealth. So most initiatives provide direct benefits to Pennsylvania taxpayers, like the improvements to our unclaimed property, like improving our rainy day fund investment profile that saved us another $50 million. And I should mention, we successfully pursued a MoneyGram lawsuit, which probably not a lot of you are familiar with, but it went all the way to the United States Supreme Court, and that gave us an additional $20 million in unclaimed property, and it will provide another $2 million a year. The money previously was going to Delaware, by the way, and they were using it to fund their state. So the other thing we mentioned with Representative Friel's response, I mentioned the fee reductions in the GSP and the IP for our 529 plan. So that's $17 million over 3 years and $6.5 million every single year for the GSP. So some initiatives have the benefits to both customers and savings to the department, like transitioning payments to the entire state system of higher education from paper checks to ACH. So the universities, they get their money faster, and there is no expense by not sending paper checks. We've also achieved a lot of operational savings from many initiatives, just like deploying technology to reduce the volume of mail. One example was, statutorily, we have to send unclaimed property due diligence mailings. And so we were getting a lot returned. So we reduced that number from 50,000 to 10,000, and that's a savings of $25,000. And then when we transitioned vendor payments to ACH, we got similar savings. So through process improvements and efficiencies, we estimate we've achieved about $2.6 million annually in savings in our department. But again, a great deal of the savings really goes to taxpayers.
And thank you for those efforts and that savings. To circle back briefly before I move on, did you track how much savings there were in taxpayer dollars due to your reduction in your complement? And that's something you can provide later if you don't have it at your fingertips. So moving on, transparency is another hot topic right now. Excuse me, particularly considering all of the wasteful spending that has been recently discovered at the federal level. What initiatives or policies have you advocated for or implemented that made sure that there is more transparency with how our taxpayer dollars are spent here in the Commonwealth?
Okay, well, you know what? The best place to talk about that is the transparency portal. So Treasury has an award-winning transparency portal, and it really gives taxpayers just incredible insight into how the state spends their money. So it's a good tool to hold government accountable and give our constituents the same access that their elected officials have. And overall, it must be working because it is the second most popular Treasury site, of course, after unclaimed property. So our transparency portal provides very comprehensive data. It shows state budget appropriations, expenditures, and revenues by department and by fund. It provides detailed contract information, so we have the e-contracts library. You can look at our investment pools, our asset allocations, and we have a fiscal health scorecard, which I love, and that shows how we measure up against other states on a lot of metrics. I'll just name a few, like our credit rating, our rainy day fund, our pension funding, and unemployment rates. But since I've taken office, I'll mention the features that I added. Ooh, it's red. So Ledger 5, doesn't that sound mysterious? Yep. So Ledger 5 is a tool used by government. It's an accounting tool to account for non-budgeted expenditures. So before we had Ledger 5, nobody could see what those expenditures were. Now everybody can see them. We added a real-time revenue comparison feature to the portal, and we added federal funding details, which we never had before, and we added county and state level data on programs, all our consumer programs, 529, ABLE, Keystone Scholars, unclaimed property. So now people can see the reach that these programs have in their communities.
So unfortunately, my time is up, but thank you so very much for everything you're doing in your testimony here today.
Thank you.
Thank the gentlelady, Representative Kincaid.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's important for us to talk about what is happening at the federal level, because a lot of that, we've had conversation after conversation with secretaries here throughout budget hearings talking about when the federal government pulls money that has been congressionally appropriated, and how difficult and catastrophic that could actually be for the Commonwealth. And just last week, we learned that the current administration, federal administration, took $80 million out of the bank account of New York City. And I'm wondering if you can speak to whether Pennsylvania has safeguards in place to prevent this from happening, and what we can do to ensure that federal money that has been legally appropriated and transferred to the Commonwealth is not improperly taken out of our bank accounts by the federal government.
Thanks for that question, Representative Kincaid. So I saw that same article, I think it was last week, and so I immediately contacted my chief counsel, Christopher Crading, and my comptroller, who's in the back here. And I have to say, in 30 years, we have never seen anything like this happen. We've never had a bank account frozen. So we tried to dig into it a little bit, and it looks to me like It wasn't federal money appropriated directly to New York City. It was appropriated to FEMA, and then they had some grants, the Shelter and Services Program for illegal immigrants. So typically, one time we had money clawed back, and it was Hurricane Sandy. And that was because we didn't spend it in the allotted time. But they didn't come in and sweep it out. We had to send it back. So it's not clear to us if they just didn't give them follow-on money, or if they actually froze their account and went in and got it. And maybe my chief counsel would want to add something to that.
So there are a couple facts that we don't know fully, Representative, but it was the city of New York had what was called a Treasury account that received the money for grants that were to go out.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I appreciate that we're trying to figure out what happened in New York. What my question is do we have mechanisms in place to prevent the federal government from clawing back money out of our accounts if it's already there?
So what we're trying to express is we don't think it was a separate city of New York account that they just grabbed the money.
I understand that. I'm just asking if we have a mechanism in Pennsylvania to prevent money that is in our account from the federal government from being removed by the federal government.
So we don't think that they could come in and swoop money from us, because how would they even figure out which account it's in? Mm-hmm. Because once it goes into, a concentration bank and then it goes to BNY, so we don't see how they could do that. Now, if they freeze an account, that's a different matter. So if something happened, we would just, immediately contact the Attorney General and the Governor's office and go from there.
So the Attorney General and the Governor would be the route that we would have for protection in that regard.
Well, if they froze the account, we'd have to file a lawsuit.
Okay, thank you. I want to pivot to landslides. You have been incredibly supportive of my efforts to establish a landslide insurance program in Pennsylvania for those impacted by landslides. And I'm wondering if you can speak to the benefits that you see in establishing that program.
I can. And, I didn't really know a lot about those landslides until we talked to you. So thank you for that. So Treasury, as well as Department of Insurance and the Department of Environmental Protection, they're represented on the fund board, and that's for sinkholes to the Coal and Clay Mine Subsidence Fund Board. Okay? So that fund was created in 1961 as an affordable means by which property owners can purchase insurance to protect structures against losses. And that insurance coverage has been very affordable, which is fantastic. So the current average cost of insurance, it's like 25 cents per $1,000 of coverage. And as of 2023, there were 62,000 policies in force, and the average annual premium was $73.61. So net of liabilities, that insurance fund balance was $140.2 million as of June of 2024. So we think, I know that you had introduced legislation to do something similar, and we think that makes sense. We think that's prudent. We think that would work. I think it's a common sense solution to a problem that the state has already provided coverage for, something similar for decades in the past. However, any expansion of the existing fund's liability coverage must be in a manner that doesn't, risk solvency of the other fund, but we don't think it would.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentlelady, Representative Flood.
Thank you, Chairman. Madam Secretary, welcome to you and your team today. Who doesn't love finding out that they have unclaimed property?
Exactly.
Under state law, the Commonwealth is responsible for the custody and control of abandoned and unclaimed property, but the Treasurer administers the unclaimed property program and receives hundreds of millions of dollars in unclaimed property every year. These items and funds go abandoned, often for things as simple as a misspelled name or an out-of-date address. And I can tell you in my office, we do everything we can with my amazing district office staff, trying to connect our constituents with the funds that they are entitled to, utilizing, postcards and social media and email and just doing what we can. And there is not one person who is upset about receiving these funds, so it's really great, this program. In your time as treasurer, your office has returned more than $700 million in unclaimed property and worked to make improvements to the program, making it easier and faster for the rightful owners to claim the property. So, Madam Secretary, your office has seen an uptick to date. Has your office seen an uptick to date in unclaimed property claim requests, and how has your office been working to ensure Pennsylvanians and claimants are being returned property that is rightfully theirs?
Sure. So yes, we've had a huge uptick in the amount of unclaimed property and the amount of claims. So last calendar year in 2024, Treasury returned the most amount ever in a single year, and we've had the program, I think, since 1993. So $272 million, and we had the most claims ever processed, 220,000 claims. So that means that the average value last year for a claim was about $1,300. Wow. Last year, I'm going to also mention that we returned 70 military decorations. So we still have $4.5 billion in unclaimed property being safeguarded by Treasury. And so anybody that might be watching online, make sure that you go to patreasury.gov/unclaimed property and search for yourself, your family, and your friends, because every single dollar matters in this economy. And a little bit of money can go a long way to help a family that might be struggling. So some of the things we do, of course, we have to send out our mailings. We also do all kinds of vault tours. We do all kinds of press releases. And we do a lot of legislative events that I think help gets the word out. Last year we did, I think it was 116 legislative events. I participated in a number of them myself when I was available. And that was to help facilitate unclaimed property for your constituents. So also I could mention Money Match.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Yeah, if you could provide us with a summary and update on the Pennsylvania Money Match program that's been signed into law as Act 81 of 2024 on July 17, 2024. Do you foresee an uptick in unclaimed property requests in the upcoming fiscal year as well? So if those, you can grab both of those.
I do. So Money Match was signed into law, and we sent our first Money Match letters out at the end of January. And so later this month, we'll be sending checks out. So that's another way that you can work with us. We intend to send all the caucuses a letter of your constituents that I will be sending a check to. So you could reach out to them with a letter saying, hey, this isn't a scam, this is your money, cash your check. So Pennsylvania Money Match allows us for the first time ever to return up to $500 automatically to single account owners. And so the first letters we sent out were about 8,500, and that was because it was the first trial. We intend to send out about 40,000 every quarter moving forward. And so we estimate this first batch, which was really the trial, will get back about $2 million. And we're hoping we build up to about $20 million more a year. But think about that.
Yeah.
You just get a check in the mail. So we're very excited about the Money Match program. We appreciate that it passed unanimously. I will mention that originally we were hoping that we would have an upward limit to $5,000. There's 14 other states that do this. Most states are, like Oregon's $10,000, North Carolina's $5,000, so most are well over $500, and it works very well with other states. So hopefully that'll be the next step.
Well, that would be great. And I know, too, some of the issues that I was having in my district office was getting people to understand that this is not a scam, that this is money that is owed to them. So I appreciate all the work that you're doing. And if you could just really quick, can you tell us, from time to time you can auction off some unclaimed property. Can you tell us about that, and when is the next auction?
Sure. So we have the largest working vault in the nation right across the street. So anybody that wants to come tour, you're welcome to come. And most unclaimed property that we do receive is money, but we get a fair amount of unclaimed property in abandoned safe deposit boxes. We, from time to time, also get it from nursing homes, from police evidence lockers, sometimes from dorms. And some of it's small, like rare coins, currency, jewelry, but it can be bigger. So for example, right in the vault, we have autographed electric guitars signed by Red Hot Chili Peppers, Guns N' Roses, Rolling Stones, and Motorhead. And so we look for the owners for at least 3 years after we get this unclaimed property, but sometimes we run out of room, so we do 2 auctions a year, one in the fall, one in the spring. The one in the fall, we broke another record, and I'm going to have a hard time breaking this one because it was $605,000. It's good timing that you ask when the next one is because it's the end of this month.
Nice.
And so, yeah, we're super excited about it. I will mention it's an online auction. It's with Puck and Puck out of Downingtown.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank the gentlelady, Representative Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Secretary, for coming here today. Back in 2022, the legislature unanimously passed House Bill 2447, a bill directing the Treasury to divest Commonwealth holdings in the Treasury and pension from investments connected to the government of Russia and Belarus. That was passed unanimously in this chamber, 200 votes, unanimously in the Senate, and for good reason. The co-sponsorship memo said that at the time, the legislature had a moral obligation to ensure that our public fund investments are not inadvertently supporting those who are engaging in an unprovoked invasion of their democratically elected neighbors. I went back and looked at some of the comments from that debate. Then Representative Rothman said, the only thing that Russia understands is force. It talked about our financial commitments, winning the Cold War, and the need to rise to the defense of Ukraine and protect our allies with whom we have a shared commitment to liberty. I also saw some of the comments talk about prohibiting future investment and involvement with those that have attacked our democratic allies. I'm wondering, given those stated reasons, how's the Treasury progressing towards the goal of divestiture?
So basically, we're divested. So if you looked at last year's appropriation, it was $2.485 million. And of that money, most of it was Russian divestment losses at SIRS, a little bit from Iran, and the rest was administrative costs. If you look at the line item this year, it's $150,000, and that is strictly for administrative costs because we have to supply an annual report. Now, as far as Treasury goes, on the very day that Putin illegally invaded Ukraine, we were actually sitting in senior staff, and I said, we got to get out because we knew the markets were going to freeze. We were the only agency in the Commonwealth to get our money out before those markets did close. So we didn't really suffer any losses, so we were really happy about that. I also supported legislation that you're referring to, now Act 57, which bans companies connected in the governments of Russia and Belarus from receiving state contracts, grants, or tax credits.
That's great. And given that we have an ongoing obligation to avoid future acquisition, what's the due diligence that we're doing going forward to make sure that we're not investing in these companies that are attacking our neighbors and that don't stand for the same things that we do?
Thanks for the follow-on question. So to make sure that we're complying with the Russia-Belarus, it used to be Sudan, but they're off the list now, Treasury compiles a report, so we look at what SIRS, PSERS, we compile a report for the entire Commonwealth. But I think your follow-on question, you're wondering about other bad actors. So in February of '22, I did direct our investment team to divest from China, and that was due to concerns about geopolitical risk, human rights abuses, but really when you look at China's investments, they're risky, and that's because of their low financial transparency. They have shifting regulatory environment. They have a lack of independent auditing. There's intellectual property issues, and there's an absence of a commitment to capitalistic markets. So we did divest from China, and I support legislation that's out there to divest all Commonwealth holdings from companies domiciled by the CCP, and to make sure there's another bill that requires that we look at geopolitical risk when we're looking at any kind of investment analysis.
And have any of the, I know statutory definition-wise, House Bill 2447 talked about a number of Biden-era executive orders. Most of the prohibited actors were defined by order. None of the recent federal executive orders have affected the scope of our divestiture, or I know it continues also while we have those orders in place. None of those orders have been affected or have changed this policy that we have?
No.
Okay, thank you. And there's a request for additional money for cybersecurity. How much of that is related to threats from state actors?
Okay, so yes, we requested an extra $200,000 this year in our cyber appropriation. So last year, we had 200 million attempts on our firewall. So 200 million. So, you know, because we make every state payment, that's 1.7 million payments a month, 3 payments a second, we have a tremendous amount of information that we're trying to protect, like bank accounts, like routing numbers. Because we do the 529 and PA-ABLE, there's, you know, PII. So it's really incumbent on us to make sure that we do everything possible to protect that information. And so this extra $200,000, it's really because, you know, with cloud computing and AI, our footprint and the access points are expanding, and that makes sense and it's logical, but we have to be more diligent than ever and to make sure, because when you think about it, Treasury is government and finance, and that's 2 of the 5 top industries that cyber criminals are targeting, which makes us right in the crosshairs for criminals.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Marcel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much, Treasurer Garrity, for being here. I wanted to first just thank you for your leadership regarding the Pennsylvania TAP Act. It was just an absolute honor to be able to work on that legislation with you, with Representative Friel. It is a really good story in terms of working together in a bipartisan way to get things done for Pennsylvania. So I really just wanted to thank you for your leadership and your ability to work on that legislation with us. First, I wanted to ask you about just launching that, you know, program. How has that been going? What are some of the things that, I guess, current and future plans you might have to try to ensure that there are people across the Commonwealth that know about this great new program?
So are you talking about the TAP Act? Or are you talking?
TAP Act, yes, Pennsylvania TAP Act.
Okay. So first, I appreciate you, as well as Representative Gallagher and all the co-sponsors, for reintroducing the legislation. So I also want to thank everybody here for your decades of strong bipartisan support for the Tremendous Savings Program. So I think we all agree that empowering families to save for their children's education has always been bipartisan. And PA 529 accounts are just such a great way for families to save for all kinds of educational opportunities, and they come with huge tax benefits. So they can be used to pay for more than just a, you know, a 4-year degree, which I always emphasize, but there are a lot of options. So we've updated our messaging to try and get the word out to make sure that everyone knows that PA 529 accounts can help the next generation pay for the training they need to succeed in today's workforce, like the training offered by our great community colleges, technical schools, and apprenticeship programs. So the TAP Act is specific, I don't know if everybody knows this, but it's specific to the GSP, which I mentioned earlier, allows you to buy today's credits for use down the line. So thanks to the great work by the General Assembly in designing the original TAP Act and a recent tax code changes affecting the Roth IRA rollovers, we have the ability to implement federal changes impacting 529 plans. So there were federal changes which took effect in 2018, which allowed families to use PA 529 accounts to cover K through 12 tuition. And I'm pleased to report that families are already using it. They've used well over $100 million to pay for K through 12 tuition expenses. So we know that this is something that families want and they support it, okay? But our law needs to be updated because right now, our actuarial assumptions assume that students begin drawing this money down when they turn 18. So the legislation allows Treasury the authority to invest the GSP fund more appropriately for K through 12 expenses, as well as based on a typical shorter time horizon. So basically the bottom line is the GSP was designed for families saving for higher education, not kindergarten. And so that's why we need to adjust our investment strategy to make it a little shorter time horizon.
Absolutely, and I appreciate all your work on this very important program and look forward to continuing that work. Do you think there are any additional resources that your office needs to make this program more successful? I know we're obviously working on the legislation with Representative Gallagher, but are there other things that would be helpful to just keep enabling such great work to be done by your department?
I think we have the sufficient resources. What really helped was when we expanded our outreach team to 8 people. And so just last year, they had 1,000 events across the Commonwealth, all 67 counties. And of those 1,000 events, 830 were in person. And so we also went to, fairs in 39 counties, 116 legislative events. So we're really, really working hard to get the word out. And we have rural outreach. Where I find when I travel is that it's mostly the rural counties that aren't aware of not only, the 529, but our other consumer programs. They're the ones that are skeptical about unclaimed property. And so we've really emphasized the rural aspect of it.
That's wonderful work. Again, thank you so much for that. And then quickly, before my time is up, can you provide an update on the TAP Advisory Board and some of the activities that they've been focused on?
Absolutely, and I will mention that my good friend, Representative Friel, is a new member on the board, and we're all happy to have you. But this board has 19 members, and they're advisory in nature, but they bring expertise in the field of education, business, and government, and they bring it all to the table. So the board has 5 ex officio members, but it also has 4 members appointed by the state Senate, so that's 2 Ds and 2 Rs, and then 4 members appointed by the state House, again, 2 Ds, 2 Rs, and then the governor has 6 members. And of the 6 members appointed by the governor, 1 is a PASHE president, 1 is a president of a community college, and 1 is a private university. So I mentioned the board is advisory in nature, but they provide invaluable advice, suggestions, and feedback, and I know I'm running out of time. But one of the board's most critical roles is to provide the governor and the General Assembly an annual report on the great 529 College and Career Savings Program, and that report includes many recommendations for the betterment of their program. And because we're out of time, I'll say you can, call me up or ask Representative Friel if you want to know some of the recommendations in our last report.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentlelady. Representative Curry.
Thank you, Chairman, and hello. How are you today? Glad that you're here, and welcome to your staff. I have a couple questions for you. In looking at the investments that families make for their children and trying to invest in making sure that their children have money for school, we know the 529 plan. And the other thing, I want to ask a little bit about that, so I'll ask about that first. The 529 plan, most folks that know about it and who are educated about it know that it's a plan that you can invest in so that your children will have monies to be able to go to, like you explained earlier, trade school, college, whatever's next after high school. What is the best time to make those investments? And if you are like many parents out here, haven't made the investment yet, but you have a child in middle school, or you have a child that's just starting high school, is that still a time where you can begin to invest, or would you suggest something else?
No, I would suggest, of course, the earlier the better, because every dollar saved today is a dollar that you don't have to save down the road. But I think it's so important because studies show that children with even a modest amount of savings for their education are 3 times more likely to go to some sort of post-secondary school, and they're 4 times more likely to graduate. So
4 times more likely to graduate from high school?
A post-secondary school.
Oh, a post-secondary.
Yes. So
wow.
It really is powerful because you're telling that child that you believe in them.
Right,
Yes,
right. And with that being said, a lot of times grandparents and aunties and uncles, they want to be able to give their children and their families a special gift. So we know, a lot of us in the room remember those paper savings bonds that look like you had $100 when you got it. But we know that wasn't the case because it had to mature and then you cash it in later. Can you tell us a little bit about the savings bonds today and like what people who have those in their drawers at home can do with them and what it means to them when their aunties and uncles gave them back when they were having a birthday or whatever back then?
Sure. So U.S. savings bonds, right now, they're only issued electronically, so no more of that paper in the drawer.
Right.
But prior to that, yes, they were paper, and we always think of these dating back. You remember Uncle Sam, and we were using them to fund the war, but they actually go back to the Civil War, which is pretty interesting.
Wow.
So once the bond matures, it's no longer earning interest. So redeem it, first of all, and then invest it in your 529, or start a 529. But there's a little-known fact about U.S. Treasury bonds, and that is this. The U.S. Treasury does not routinely let bondholders know when their bonds mature and stop earning interest. And then this lack of notice and the long maturity date, because most savings bonds are like 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, that explains why, as of January 2025, there are 98 million unredeemed savings bonds. And you know what? Valued at over $1 trillion. And that's nationwide, not just in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
So for the past 10 years, my department was involved in a lengthy legal battle with the U.S. Treasury. We were trying to get those unredeemed bonds back to Pennsylvania as unclaimed property, because for Pennsylvania, they're valued over $850 million. So we think that we're better prepared to go return these bond proceeds to their owners, or, unfortunately, in most cases, it's going to be beneficiaries and, family members. So the federal government has opposed our efforts. During my first term as Treasury, we were successful in having over $5 million in matured and unredeemed bonds proceeds returned to Pennsylvania. And I think of that number, I think we did get back over $2 million in unclaimed property. So we really worked to find the owners. So unfortunately, it seems like right now our only option to recover the remaining funds is for Congress to enact legislation to mandate the return to state unclaimed property administrators. But you know what? They probably already spent the money right now.
Well, thank you, Treasurer Garrity. And, I would love to get that information kind of in writing so that I can kind of talk to people about it, because I think it's really important. People have these bonds and they don't know what to do with them.
We'll get you information.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank the gentlelady, Representative Mako.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Treasurer Garrity. I lost a bet, so I have to announce that it's National Cheese Doodle Day today, so I just bring a little levity to our hearing today. But so switching to more important issues, it was brought to my attention that you just put together a recent announcement that you were banning the Chinese artificial intelligence, the platform DeepSeek, off of all Treasury-issued devices, citing the concerns about privacy and security, and I couldn't agree more about good call. Same with TikTok as well. And my understanding is your department's firewalls are also blocking these as well, and the parent apps and all that. Is that true?
It is true. Thank you, Representative Mako. And I didn't know it was National Cheese Doodle Day, so fun fact.
Neither did I. It's also National Absinthe Day, but
Okay. So
we'll steer clear of that.
So DeepSeek and other platforms like TikTok, so they're sponsored by the CCP.
Yep.
And so because they're sponsored by the CCP, they pose a significant security risk. Now, DeepSeek, I would say, is worse because the data has the potential to be much worse because it's like ChatGPT.
Yep.
And as AI tools continue to develop and China continues to attempt to insert its digital tentacles into all functions of American life, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure I safeguard taxpayer money and safeguard information. But I had mentioned earlier, government and finance are two of the top 5 target industries for cyber attacks. And so because Treasury is both government and finance, we are right in the crosshairs of criminals. So we stand on the front line to defend our critical infrastructure from cyber threats. And then I mentioned earlier, but as more and more processes depend on the computing power of machines, there's more attack vectors that become available for our adversaries to take advantage of. I mentioned the 200 million attempts on our firewall. So, and because we handle every financial transaction of the Commonwealth, we have so much information that we have to protect. So we at Treasury, everybody at Treasury, takes cybersecurity so seriously, and we prioritize it.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more. I would also argue that it's the next battlefield is
It is.
cybersecurity. In a serendipitous bipartisan support effort, Representative Brennan stole my question about the $200,000 going to cybersecurity. Just a little dovetail on that. Is there anything that you see that we as a legislature can do to help in the cyber front above and beyond the $200,000 for cybersecurity? And if, like, nothing off the top of your head right now, you can get back to us and we can work on this later on.
Financially, the $200,000 is great, and that's for increased cyber operations because obviously, you know, the emphasis is, you know, grows every single year. We do have Treasury, our investigative team is going around and they're educating our different bureaus about what to look for as far as fraudsters. So it's not necessarily cyber, but it's, you know, it's all about fraud. So if that would be helpful to any of your members, we'd be happy to pass that information along to you as well.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah,
If we can do any webinars, I mean, anything that we can do to support. We do a lot already. I don't know if anybody knows PN, but you know, we're involved in all kinds of, you know, trade groups, agencies. We work with local governments, so we're very, very active across the Commonwealth.
No, that's comforting to hear. I don't have any other questions, so if there's anything that you need of us as a legislature, just let us know, reach out, and we'll
Thank you
do
so
what we
much.
can.
Thank you,
Thank you,
gentlemen.
Treasurer.
Representative Mullins.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and Treasurer, it's good seeing you again, as well as Attorney Gregg and Deputy Secretary, or Deputy Treasurer Zogby. It's good to see familiar faces, and I got to shout out my longtime friend Josh Wilson sitting over there. Representative Mako just asked about any to-do lists or agenda items that we should be taking up here. So I would very much like to elevate the matter of personal savings, retirement security, something that is vitally important for people who have worked so hard all their lives and deserve savings, a comfortable retirement at the end of their careers. A few years ago, you came out in support of the Keystone Saves program, a voluntary retirement program for the nearly 2 million Pennsylvania employees who don't have access to a traditional retirement savings plan. As you know, last year, we were in the trenches together here as we saw that piece of legislation that I introduced pass out of here in a bipartisan manner. And I'd like to say we'd be able to do it again and perhaps this time clear it through the Senate and start helping people save. Could you just share if you do still support that? Are you still with me? You're still hanging in there with me? And if you could just shed any light on the real pressing need for such a program.
Absolutely. So first of all, Representative Mullins, I really appreciate your leadership on this issue, and it's been great to work with you on it. So I come from a rural, conservative perspective, and I think our state has a big problem. So when you have 44% of your private sector workforce that doesn't have access to retirement savings at their job, something has to be done to help Pennsylvanians achieve retirement security. So when I first started my first term in 2021, I got sticker shock digging into this issue. I learned that Pennsylvanians not only don't save enough for retirement, but it was predicted that taxpayers will be on the hook for an additional $17 billion over 10 years. And that includes $14 billion in increased state social service costs, and the other $3 billion is lost tax revenue from reduced consumer spending, of course. So that is, you know, a little over $1 billion every single year. It is a huge number. So I thought about it, and it was probably, looking back, maybe a little bit of an aggressive you know, initiative to take up in my first year, but I did it.
I'm glad you did.
Yes, but we know that people are 15 times more likely to save for retirement when they can do that at their place of work. So it's really easy for some people to say, well, have them go down to the bank and open up an account. It doesn't work that way. So that's why I advocated for Keystone Saves. And you know what? It's not government run, it's government sponsored, just like the 529 plan. I visited hundreds of small businesses all over the Commonwealth, and they all would say to me, Stacy, we just don't have the bandwidth to start up our own 401k, but if all I have to do is provide a payroll census, and offer payroll deduction, I'm in. But unfortunately, after working on this for years, the Commonwealth just doesn't have the appetite to get it across the finish line. Now, I will mention this, 16 other states have adopted similar programs, and even Kansas is looking to adopt some sort of auto IRA program. And a couple of states, there's a lot of success underway, but California has almost $1.2 billion saved and almost 540,000 accounts. Illinois has $233 million saved and almost 156,000 accounts. So we know it's working. But to that end, I'm still with you. I just think that we're going to have to go back and look at maybe different ways that we can get consensus with our stakeholders and some of our, business leaders that oppose it. So we have some ideas, and we've already started reaching out. So I think we need to find common ground and find some solutions to this growing problem that we're already paying a price for.
I appreciate it, and I think consensus is critical to be found around this issue to see this through to the finish line. As long as it continues to check the boxes that it does, that it provides for a reasonable retirement security, doesn't cost the taxpayers anything, and is not a forced mandate on small businesses. I think it checks those boxes, and I think we're going to. I'm feeling positive. So
I'm glad.
Let's get back to it. Thanks.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Madam Treasurer. I'm just going to give a quick shout out to my friend and colleague from the Scranton area, because I was one of those bipartisan supporters of that program. Took a good bit of heat from this side of the aisle, but as a small business owner who entered employees into QuickBooks, a one-time setup of a retirement savings account is not an enormous amount of time or what I viewed an unfunded mandate on business. So I do echo and see it firsthand for people who get to start a retirement, the opportunity for them to begin to save and then continue to save. And I think one of the best things about that program, if they switch employers, which often those folks do, if the employer already had a program, then their program was alpha, but if they didn't, it allowed them to save from employer to employer. I don't have a question in that space, but just wanted to echo the sentiment that helping people save for their own retirement benefits Pennsylvanians. I don't know if you have a comment on that.
I do. I always like to say that we're encouraging folks to be less reliant on the government, not more reliant on the government. And I always like to say also that some of these folks they're my relatives, they're my neighbors, they're your favorite bartender, they're your favorite waiter, they're your hairstylist. So these are people that we all know.
And she doesn't want to be working until she's 70,
Exactly.
So another program, a great program I'd like to touch on is the PA ABLE program. Last session, we had a disability guardianship kind of forum that was really heavily attended, and the families of individuals with disabilities, they really appreciate that PA ABLE program, but not everybody knows about it. Can you first just touch on the program itself and the benefits because there are a lot of unincurred costs, when you have an individual with disabilities?
A lot of people don't know about it. You're exactly right, Representative Nelson, and that's because it's new. I mean, the first accounts were opened in 2017, but PA ABLE stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience, and that's exactly what the program does. So PA ABLE is an amazing tool for people with disabilities. And before the General Assembly enacted ABLE, people with disabilities could not save their own money without becoming ineligible for important benefits like SSI and medical assistance. And you know what? That was shameful. So I appreciate this committee's support of PA ABLE. So the PA ABLE accounts, they grow tax-free at both the state and the federal level. The program is incredibly flexible, so you can use it to pay for day-to-day expenses like groceries, like rent, like going to your doctor's appointments, or you can use it for larger expenses like assistive technology, modifying your vehicle. So the program has seen tremendous growth in a very short period of time. So as of February, we had over 10,200 accounts. And the assets have more than tripled since I took office. So we just passed the $150 million threshold.
Do you know how
yes.
how does Pennsylvania compare? Because that's great news about the program. How do we compare against, other states that have ABLE
Sure.
programs?
So almost every state in the nation has an ABLE program. There are either 2 or 3 that do not. I think one is Idaho, and I can't remember the other one. But at any rate, Pennsylvania is the 5th largest ABLE program in the entire nation. So we're doing really quite well. We are part of a 19-state national ABLE alliance, and of those 19 states, Pennsylvania is by far the largest. We have 25% of those assets under management. So the program is doing quite well.
Last question for you, and on to my time. Hopefully we'll be able to yield some back to the good chair. A family wanting to get engaged and start that program, do they need a lawyer? Do they need an accountant?
No, they don't. It's very easy. You just go to our website, and there's a little quiz you can take that basically tells you if you're eligible. Now, I will mention, because a lot of people don't know this, right now, to be eligible for ABLE, you would have had to have the onset of your disability occur before the age of 26. Starting in January 1st, 2026, that age is going to increase from 26 to 46, thanks to the ABLE Age Adjustment Act at the federal level. And what this is going to allow is 6 million more Americans, including 1 million veterans, to be eligible to participate in ABLE. And so that's why it's even more important that we get the word out, because now we have more changes coming, and we'll be able to help more people in Pennsylvania.
Great. Thank you, Madam Treasurer.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, yielding back on green light. That's pretty exciting.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Young.
Good afternoon and happy Women's History Month. I'm gonna say it all the time, and I did not have to lose a bet to do that. So I'm excited to be here. I will say this. Thank you. Thank you so much for your presence, not only here today, but also in a district, I would say, with your unclaimed property world of information. You have been able to give the constituents of the 185th district almost $50,000 back, so we're looking forward to doing more of those type of events, along with making sure that they're educated about how to save in such a time as we are right now in government. And so I'm looking forward to having those conversations with the community on the different ways in which your department can help them better understand their money management, but also what is really happening with the budget. My question really is around your, I guess, unpacking that a little bit more. We talk a lot in specific terms here in Harrisburg, and we have some really direct questions, and we use a lot of acronyms. But when you're talking to the actual everyday constituents, they really want to know what can they do to better protect their money, and how can they get access to the money that they didn't know they had available. Your department, I believe, does a great job, right? Because we have internal conversations, but in the 3-bullet, if you can comment, how can you direct the everyday constituent to have access to the monies or the funds or properties that we have in our possession as the state?
Sure, it's very, very simple because we simplified the process. So they can pop up their phone. They can just type in patreasury.gov/unclaimed property and pop their name in. It takes about 2 minutes to file a claim. And if it's a simple claim, it's just fast tracked. They can get their money in less than 2 weeks. And also, if you find folks, our legislative office will fast track those folks as well to help you. And also, if you have any legislative events that you want my outreach team to come, and I'll come if I'm available, we're happy to come and not only promote unclaimed property, but also we can talk about PA 529 and PA ABLE.
Awesome. Thank you. That's my question.
Thank the gentlelady. Representative Kutz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here, Treasurer. And thank you for all the work you've done. I see you crossing the state everywhere. It's so wonderful to see you out and about, including in the 87th district, and all the help your office has been for unclaimed property for constituents in the 87th district. I sincerely appreciate. I'd like to ask you kind of a long-term outlook question here. I'm curious what you see as the person tasked with managing, getting money out the door and investments for the Commonwealth. What are the challenges you see facing the Commonwealth's long-term fiscal health?
Sure. Thanks for the question, Representative Coots. And this is one of the most important questions facing Pennsylvania. And it's true that budget decisions impact more than one year, and I think it's especially true this year. So the good news is that the general fund balance looks very strong through the end of the current fiscal year. So we anticipate we'll end the year with $11.3 billion cash balance, so that's assets in the bank. And when I talk about a cash balance, think about that as like your checkbook. So when you get paid, you can't spend all that money because you know you're still going to have to pay your mortgage and buy groceries and pay utility bills and such. So moving on to the budgetary side, the Independent Fiscal Office, they recently updated their projections, and that was based on the new governor's executive budget. And so those revised projections on a budgetary basis, they're a $3.5 billion deficit this fiscal year. Next year, it jumps to $6 billion, and then the year after, it's $6.9 billion. And so if the IFO's projections are correct, then the general fund surplus would be depleted in 2026, and then the rainy day fund in 26-27. Now, if you want to shift and instead look at the 7-year financial outlook provided by the governor in his budget proposal, he predicts that we'll end 24-25 with a budgetary balance of $3.2 billion, and the 25-26 year is set to end at a negative $1.6 billion balance. So according to the governor's budget projection, his 7-year projection, next budget year he'll have to dip into the rainy day fund by $1.6 billion. And that would start the use of the rainy day fund, and then if you tag on 26-27, according to the governor's projections, we'd use basically about half of the rainy day fund balance, so about half of the $7.3 billion. So if everything remains on its current course, and if the IFO is correct in their budgetary assumptions, we'll start seeing cash flow issues in the general fund in the beginning of the 28-29 year. So right at the beginning or possibly at the end of 27-28.
I'm sorry, you said that 2028 years when we'll see issues?
Cash flow issues. We'll be out of.
That's just ironic to me. There's a large national event.
Oh, I know.
So let me ask you this. So you see, that sounds to me like what I would characterize as a fiscal cliff. Basically, we're using all of our checking account and all of our savings account in the next several years,
yes,
leaving taxpayers on the hook. So you see this kind of dreary budgetary outlook based on figures from the Independent Fiscal Office. They view it as kind of a dire situation here. Can we really afford to be spending $51 billion this year with deficits projected out far into the out years?
Well, I don't envy the decision of the General Assembly, so of course that's up to you how much you spend. But this is going to be a tough year, and I know you're going to have tough conversations. And of course, the governor's initial number, the $51.5 billion, I know it's a starting point. I know you're going to have a lot of conversations. But I will say that we're out of our surplus, plus the rainy day fund, beginning of 28-29.
That's remarkable. That's remarkable. I appreciate the answer, Madam Treasurer, and thanks so much for being here. And I think we certainly see so many of these challenges down the road, and your stewardship will certainly be vital to ensuring we protect the Commonwealth's investments and ensuring that while we have a lot of decisions to make in this building, that hopefully the governor will kind of recognize some of these long-term fiscal challenges. I'll look forward to working with your office to continue to provide these vital services. Thank you so much for your time, and I will yield the remainder back. Thank you.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Siegel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Treasurer Garrity, thank you for joining us here today. I want to applaud you first and foremost for your support for so much of the bipartisan legislation that has come out of this House, obviously in the last few years, both the Keystone Saves and the 529. I think those help put money back in people's pockets or would help put money back in people's pockets, certainly with Keystone Saves. I also want to applaud you for your work on being a good steward of taxpayer dollars. I want to ask you specifically in that lane about digital currency. There's a number of states around the country, Pennsylvania included, that have introduced legislation over the last few years to give their treasuries the capacity to invest in digital currencies, not specifically Bitcoin, but Bitcoin in particular. Given the volatility of those currencies, the fact that they are frequently used in illicit activities, specifically money laundering, and the fact that the folks that own that are a very concentrated few who amass a great deal of wealth from it. I just kind of want to know what your stance is on whether or not the Treasury would like that responsibility or whether or not you see that as a worthwhile or reasonable investment for folks in the Commonwealth.
Right, so crypto might be an acceptable investment in some portfolios, but given there's, lack of regulation, there's volatility, because when you look in changes in the stock market, Bitcoin has followed the market. So based on the Commonwealth's prudent person standard, currently, right now, as it stands, and that might change, it doesn't seem appropriate for the state treasurer or pension portfolios. I'm guided by sole purpose doctrine. And that means I have three main responsibilities, and that is, number one, protect the fund. Number two, make sure we have sufficient liquidity because we pay every bill in the Commonwealth. And number three, make sure that we, if possible, earn a risk-adjusted rate of return. So we're very closely monitoring developments in that crypto space, and we have regular discussions with our investment advisor, our custodian, other experts. I'm certainly not an expert around crypto. I will tell you this, if we were to invest in crypto, it would be in an ETF. We did a due diligence, and we tried to look at what every other state in the nation is doing. So there's a pension funds of a couple of states. They have very small amount in crypto, but it's through ETFs. So no state appears to have any direct holdings in crypto. So an area that I think we could look at would be allowing individuals to use cryptocurrency as a method of payment. So there are 2 states that do that right now. Colorado allows it for tax payments, and Louisiana allows it, to make any payment. So it would kind of be like this. So say you're at the DMV, and you're going to renew your license, and you go to a shopping cart, and then you have all these payment options that might be available. Crypto would be one. So this would not be the agency. It would be handled by like a third-party vendor. And so what they do then is send you a URL code. You can pick which wallet you want to use, and then they convert it to cash and send it to the bank of the agency. So I actually have a meeting later this month to talk about that. So there's still a lot we don't know. Last week it was reported, or I think 2 weeks ago now, that hackers pulled off the largest cryptocurrency heist in history, and they got at least, I think, an estimated $1.4 billion from the Bybit exchange. So the president established a working group around digital asset markets, and there's going to be a report that's submitted to his office in July of '25. So let's see if they set forth any regulatory, any legislative frameworks, proposals, and then we'll see if we relook at it. But at this time, no thanks.
I thank you, and I appreciate that. I think it would be by far, in this current environment, one of the worst possible investments for us as a Commonwealth, specifically for our retirees, given the extreme volatility of the market. The last thing we want to do is jeopardize the financial well-being of our pensioners by putting it in something as speculative and unbacked as crypto.
The CIO at PZERS agrees.
Yes.
Right now, they're not looking at crypto.
Perfect. Good. I'm glad that you share that assessment and the same level of risk aversion. I want to move on to my second question. We just heard a little bit about today's budget, or the budget as a whole. I want to talk to you a little bit more to the point about the consequences for our budget if the federal government reneges on all of its financial commitments to the Commonwealth. Because to be frank, I don't think there's any amount of money we could come up with to plug the holes that the federal government failing to give us all of our contractually obligated dollars. There's no money to plug that hole as a Commonwealth. Can you talk about how devastating that would be for our budget and the impossible decision that would put us in?
So I think it's a little bit premature. I think we have to let this play out a little bit. I think, when a new administration comes in, they're going to look at what they're spending, what programs they're spending it on. I think that's reasonable. Right now, we haven't had any of our money clawed back or frozen. And so yes, we would be in dire straits, but I can't imagine that they would freeze everything. I just can't imagine that. And for this year, we end the year with a decent cash balance of $11.3 billion. So we have some time to figure this out. And I think, I talked to the budget secretary, who you're going to see tomorrow, so it's probably a great question to ask him, actually. And right now, I checked with him, I also checked with my comptroller, and we haven't seen any freeze on any money. We've gotten everything we expected to get so far.
I agree. I would argue, though, that we're still waiting to see what the federal budget process plays out. If any amount of cuts in Medicaid materialize or SNAP, the truth is that it's going to be on us as a Commonwealth to decide how much we want to raise to meet that obligation that fails to come from the federal government, or frankly, not meet it altogether, because frankly, I don't think we can cover that hole. It's way too large. And we're going to have to step back and figure out what our obligations are, and I frankly think that's as devastating as it gets.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Kale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Treasurer, for being here today. I appreciate the questions and the answers that you've given today. Before I begin with a few questions, I would just like to say thank you. Thank you on behalf of my district, which is a district that has a lot of energy workers in it, people that work in Pennsylvania energy industries. And we don't talk too much about it now, but a number of years ago, about 5 years ago, there was this interesting trend in banking where investors and bankers were encouraging people and themselves to divest from the energy industry. And it really would have had devastating consequences for my constituents. It would have had devastating consequences for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And you stood strong for Pennsylvania workers, and you stood strong for Pennsylvania industries, and you stood strong for my constituents. So I just wanted to say thank you. If you'd like to make a comment about that, you're more than welcome to, but I really don't have a question as it relates to it.
Well, I come from manufacturing, as you know, and we did a lot around the energy industry, so I know how important it is. And also, energy costs, that's what manufacturers look at when they're going to decide which state to do their business in. Also, I live in Bradford County in the middle of the Marcellus Shale, so I appreciate the impact that it had on our community as well.
Yeah, and thankfully that pushback that you and other treasurers around the nation offered, I believe, ended this trend, and you don't get enough credit for the work that you did to do that, so thank you. The second question I have, about a year and a half ago, there was tragic events in Israel, October 7th, and then a couple of weeks or months after, there was some protest that was occurring outside your office, and I came to find out that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has a long-standing history of investing in companies and in Israel, and that long-standing tradition has continued under your leadership. Could you help us understand how those investments in the nation of Israel are doing for the Commonwealth?
Absolutely. So on October 12th, just a few days after the horrific attack by Hamas on Israel, we invested $20 million in Israel bonds. Now, I'm not the first treasurer to invest in Israel bonds. We've invested in those bonds since the 80s, 9 treasurers, including 6 Ds, 2 Rs, and 1 independent. So Israel bonds, Israel has never missed a payment. They have never defaulted. Typically, it's an above market return. And so I think why it's a great investment for Pennsylvania, and it's great to stand with our greatest ally in the Middle East. And yeah, I was protested a couple times, and that really didn't bother me at all.
Well, thank you for standing strong. I do want to transition here to a question about unclaimed property. You talked a little bit about that with my good friend, Representative Flood. And I just wanted to follow up. Is there anything that the legislator could be doing to even help our constituents more as it relates to returning unclaimed property?
So we've given all of your caucuses a detailed list of unclaimed property. So not just by zip code, because I know some of your zip codes cross, but now, and then there's a couple caucuses, I think it might be the Republican caucus, where if you call up your constituent's name, it's going to have a green $sign if they have unclaimed property available. So that's one thing. Also, I would say, we are always willing to do webinars. We're always willing to do legislative events. If you want to send the chase letter for the Pennsylvania Money Match, I think that's also great to have more constituent touches and to let them know, because I can tell you when they start getting these checks, I'm going to start getting texts from all over saying, can I really cash this check?
Yeah, and it's recently come to my attention that it's not just individuals with unclaimed property, it's also municipalities and other boroughs. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, you're right. Most people think of unclaimed properties belonging to individuals, but it also belongs to companies, it belongs to nonprofits, local governments, school districts. So I always encourage community leaders to go out and see if they have anything there. But during my administration, we decided to make a concerted effort to get money back to county governments. So we researched all 67 counties. We've returned $16.3 million to local governments, and 97% of what we found has been returned. So I'll give you a few examples from this current fiscal year. We returned over $915,000 to Bedford County, $172,000 to Taylor Township, that's Center County, and over $71,000 to Dale Borough, which is Cambria County. And there's going to be a lot more announcements on the way. So anybody can go out and search and type in their name, and you can call my legislative office or call me, and we're very happy to help you. But I always love to get money back to counties and municipalities because our local agency budgets, they're often stretched so thin, and so those unclaimed property revenues can help.
Thank you for your leadership. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Alsamer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, Treasurer Garrity. I appreciate you being here and your team, and I just want to say that up in the 139th, you've been there many times, and the people up there really appreciate your visits, and I just want to express our gratitude for whenever you're up that way, so thank you. Treasurer Garrity, it's my understanding that in October of 2024, your office, under the authority of the fiscal code that governs your department, refunded the general obligation debt service, which resulted in the governor's budget proposal increasing the debt service by $317 million. It can be assumed that it was due to the nature of bonds, where the prevailing interest rate dropped and prices in our outstanding bonds increased. Therefore, the best option for the Commonwealth was to refund the bonds so the Commonwealth was not stuck paying higher interest rate than what the issuers of the new bonds would have been paying. And the proceeds from the issuance of the newer, lower interest rates will be used to pay off the higher interest rate bonds. For context, term refunding means refinancing a debt obligation that the principal cash amount has already been held aside by the issuer of the debt. Can you elaborate why this increase is needed and summarize the refunding opportunities and cost savings associated with those?
I'd be happy to. So I'm going to caveat this by saying GO debt is assigned to the Treasury because we make the debt service payments. But we usually concur with the current request in the governor's budget because they have more insight into any planned changes to GO debt. So our appropriation for 24-25 was originally approved at $1.137 billion. The governor's proposal, he had a supplemental decrease appropriation to the 24-25 fiscal year of $37 million. So that's why the change from 24-25 to 25-26 is $317 million. So let me walk you through it. So the reason for the increase specifically is based on 2 GO debt service actions that occurred in October, like you mentioned, of 2024. So the first thing was that the Commonwealth entered into a new GO bond, and that had a face value of $1.395 billion. And so at the same time, the Commonwealth refunded outstanding 2014 GO bonds. So these debt issuances first require the passage of a debt authorization bill, which sets a limit on Commonwealth GO debt that can be issued. And then there's a capital itemization that delineates which capital projects may be funded through debt financing. So what I'm trying to say is the General Assembly, in concert with the governor controls GO debt. So you're right, a refund is basically like refinancing a mortgage when you pay existing debt to obtain savings. So the remaining 2014 series bonds, and that's $319 million, they were refunded. They resulted in a net present value savings of $18 million. So the result of these actions increased the principal and the interest payments Treasury is obligated to pay next year. So I'm going to add, as you know, geodebt financing is used by the finance to finance its capital programs, finance voter-approved bond referendums, and fund certain disaster relief programs. So the Treasurer, the Auditor General, and the Governor are the three parties for entering into geodebt. And then in addition, I'm going to mention the administration, they're anticipating going to the bond market for a refunding of 2 more geodebt issuances by June 1st of this year. So what that will involve is a savings of $61 million over the term of the issuance. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to relinquish the rest of my time. Thank you, Treasurer Garrity and team.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Eckert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Treasurer Garrity, thank you for being here. It's at the outset, I want to say it's an honor to serve with you on the PSERS board. You are a leader in many facets in the Commonwealth, and I get to work with you side by side in that, so I appreciate that opportunity to work with you at PSERS. Turning into the financial position of the state, in your position as treasurer, do you believe that saving money, not spending money, will improve our credit rating? I know in the past the governor and a lot of folks in Pennsylvania have talked about how because we have a robust rainy day fund that we've actually earned income off of, that our credit rating has improved. Can you explain a little bit about why that is, why credit rating, the credit rating agencies see the rainy day fund as a positive thing for Pennsylvania?
Sure, I'd be happy to, and thanks for the question, Representative Ecker. And I enjoy serving on the board with you as well. So the good news is that our credit rating was upgraded to AA2 from AA3 by Moody's, and that happened in October. And so when they announced the upgrade, Moody's specifically said the upgrade to AA2 is based on Pennsylvania's significant increases in its budget stabilization reserves. So, and then I'll mention our current S&P credit rating is A+ with a positive outlook. So while these are solidly investment grade ratings, PA still lags behind a lot of states, and in fact, we're kind of a middle of the road state. We do have a constitutional provision that requires the state to pay debt service, and that is a tremendous starting point when it comes to our credit rating. So whether you issue more geodebt, more bonds, that's up to you guys. I always say if it's to keep operations running, that's a bad thing. But if it's in infrastructure or other projects, then that might be a different story. So in other words, I wouldn't take out a loan to pay my car payment, but I might take out a loan to put a new roof on my house. So our last interest rate on the bond that we purchased in October of '24 was 3.429 with a lot more decimals. And if you want to look at improving our current rating, the single biggest issue to address would be the structural deficit as identified by the IFO. Now, adding to our rainy day fund, doing it consistently, that is fantastic, and that absolutely helped us get this upgrade. And then the other area that I want to mention that agencies watch closely is whether the state completes its budget work on time. Okay? So if you look at current conditions in the municipal bond market, my staff estimates that for every notch change in the credit rating, so like from neutral to plus, there's an 8 basis point difference in the interest rate on bonds. So if you have a $1 billion bond issuance, the difference between a AA and a AA plus or a AA3 to a AA2 would be about $800,000. And over the 20-year life, the bond, that would be a savings of about $16 million. So it's pretty significant.
So when we look at budgets, obviously you've looked at the governor's proposal this year, and as part of that budget, we're dipping into the rainy day fund to balance that budget. What does that do to our credit ratings? I mean, obviously the rainy day fund has helped us. I believe we've got some revenue off of the rainy day fund based on interest rates. What does tapping in the rainy day fund to balance a budget do for our credit ratings?
I'm not sure if that's going to, adversely affect our credit rating in the first year or not. I really don't know, because we'll still have, our balance right now is $7.3 billion. But I will mention that the amount that we have in the rainy day fund, it's pretty consistent with what the GFAO recommends. I think they recommend about 15%. And then there's another agency, I should find it, but they recommend 2 months of operating expenses. So if you look at, we're right there. So we're right there where it's recommended that states be, and that's to make sure, and I should mention that we looked at during the Great Recession, over a 2-year period, we needed about 15%. So that's all around $7.3 to $7.6 billion.
Yeah, well, Treasurer Garrity, I appreciate your leadership on this, and I think as we look at budgets moving forward, we're going to spend all the surplus this year. We're going to tap into the rainy day fund. Looking in out years, I think the rainy day fund looks to be depleted based on projections that we've seen. That's gonna hurt our Commonwealth. I appreciate your leadership and ultimately your advocacy to make Pennsylvania a financially stable place to live. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentleman, Chairman Greiner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam Treasurer and staff. Great seeing you today. Kind of piggybacking off my last colleague and then one a little bit earlier, being chairman of the Finance Committee, I had spoken with the Secretary of Revenue as he was testifying before the committee and was asked whether he or the governor were expecting an upcoming recession or downturn in the economy, which would result in significant unanticipated revenue shortfalls. And in my opinion, fortunately, Secretary Brown responded with, right now our projections anticipate GDP growth that would be positive, probably in the area of 2.5 to 3.1% range. So we're not expecting a recessionary period where those numbers would go down. And like I said, I'm kind of drilling down maybe on what a couple of my colleagues, and maybe you can help me clarify the current statutory authority that would permit spending that rainy day fund. We keep on talking about spending it, but I think there's rules. I know there's rules to that, and at least my understanding.
There is. Thank you, Representative Greiner.
Yeah.
So the section 1703-A of the Fiscal Code states that it is the intent of the General Assembly that money from the Budget Stabilization Reserve Fund be appropriated only when emergencies involving the health, safety, or welfare of the residents of the Commonwealth or downturns in the economy resulting in significant unanticipated revenue shortfalls cannot be dealt with through normal budget processes, and that money in the Budget Stabilization Reserve Fund shall not be used to begin new programs, but to provide for the continuation of vital public programs in danger of being eliminated or severely reduced due to financial problems resulting from the economy.
And that was my understanding as well, thinking through this, because when we have the budget presented as it is, I'm just trying to figure out how we're going to get around this. So, and just maybe to clarify then, that just, let's say we don't have the recession, that it is the forecast remains positive, and that we have no significant revenue shortfalls that are what are projected in order to meet statutory requirements. So I would be thinking that we would need to have an emergency in the health, safety, or welfare of this Commonwealth, I'm thinking, in order to us to dip into that rainy day fund. And maybe, this is what I'm worried about. I'm trying to figure this out, how this is being pushed, but that would be my understanding. I don't know whether you want to agree with that assessment or not.
So that's what the fiscal code states, but the fiscal code also provides that transfers from the fund are to be made by a 2/3 consent from the General Assembly.
That was going to be my follow-up. That's 2/3 from both chambers, is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Yeah, I just want to, so anyway, so kind of coming full circle to what others have said, and a colleague earlier, that by simply proposing a $1.6 billion transfer from the rainy day fund, that's just not going to be a simple vote here by this body when we come up with the budget. There's going to have to be a vote in order for us to transfer those monies out of the rainy day fund. At least that's my idea. I will say our spending this budget this year that was proposed is over 8% greater than the budget that was passed last year. Now, we had some supplementals this year, but our budget is 8% more than what we had last year. And I just want to be sure people understand that when we tap into that rainy day fund, it's just not going to be, well, we either have to make this decision or we have to vote on a tax increase. I just wanted to clarify that and make sure I had a good understanding of that. But as usual, like a lot of people said here, we thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your accessibility. Your staff's wonderful to work with, and appreciate you being here today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentleman, Chairman Samuelson.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Treasurer Garrity, for being here. We on the Finance Committee appreciate your cooperation over the last 2 years on so many important pieces of legislation. We made improvements to the 529 program. We made a better process for the Board of Finance and Revenue. The money match program that you've talked about was enacted into law just a few months ago. We do have some unfinished business. I know Representative Mullins talked about the Keystone Saves program. That's something we'd like to revisit and see if we can get that passed. I appreciate your bipartisan support for that initiative. Also, I believe we had a bill that got past the House, didn't get past the Senate, about other improvements to 529, some administrative changes that Representative Gallagher was working on. I believe we still need to do that to make the program as efficient as possible. Would you agree?
I agree. We need to get the TAP Act across the finish line.
We will try again.
I know you will, and I appreciate
in the House. We got it past the House. We got to work on the Senate. So I appreciate you saying that. The money match program, you said, with the authority to automatically give people their unclaimed property up to $500 through the system that has many safeguards. You've sent out 8,500 letters so far. You're planning 40,000 a quarter or maybe 160,000 a year. How many unclaimed property items are in the Treasury under $500? How many years would it take to get to all of them with the under 500 threshold?
Oh my goodness. So a huge percentage are actually under $500.
And overall, how many pieces of unclaimed property are there monetarily or?
So we have $4.5 billion in unclaimed property. As far as the number of properties, I'll have to send that over to you.
Okay.
I'm not sure off the top of my head. I know it's very significant.
But working with the $500 threshold, that will take most of this year, perhaps even into a future year, to work through the list and get those items back to all the constituents?
Well, it will. And that's because, we start at 1 year and then, we work our way down.
Okay. Thank you, and appreciate your cooperation with the legislative offices. We try very hard to connect our constituents with unclaimed property, and I really appreciate the cooperation of your whole team. My next question, I know Representative Brennan, Representative Mako touched on this, the cybersecurity. You said 1.7 million payments per quarter, and yet you have 200 million attempts from some bad actors to try to get into our system, to try to hack into our system. That's an extraordinary number. I guess Representative Mako asked, are we focusing enough attention on cybersecurity with the new appropriation of $200,000?
I would say we are. It's actually 1.7 million payments a month. So that's 3 payments every single second.
Okay.
But have you met PN and our team, our mighty team in Treasury? So he's very well known. I mean, with National Association of State Treasurers, with all of the local governments, and we spend a lot of time. We work with agencies. We have basically our firewalls analyzed every single month to make sure that we don't have any, critical vulnerabilities, and we get a clean scorecard every single month.
So you'll be adding to your cybersecurity team. How many currently are on that team?
So,
if you can say, if you can't say, I understand.
No, I can. So we have 2 assigned to the line item, but then everybody and the IT team, a piece of them, everybody's working on cyber, but we have 2 assigned to the line item.
So cybersecurity, we're dealing with outside threats. Want to talk about inside threats. I know we have a law that protects, a part of the administrative code says that anyone, an employee or a contractor with access to sensitive federal tax data has to pass a background check, has to get fingerprints by the FBI. I know a lot of those employees might be over in the Department of Revenue that are obviously have access to the federal information. How many of the 307 employees at Treasury have to go through that background check or the fingerprinting required by the administrative code with access to anybody with access to federal tax data?
I'm going to let my chief counsel answer that.
Okay.
We can give you a precise number, but it would be most of the employees, the briefers at the Board of Finance and Revenue. That's within Treasury Department.
Okay. What about the folks, I know you said 1.7 million payments a month. What about folks who who staff the computer systems or input the data? Would they be covered by such a rule with the background checks and the fingerprints?
So if I understand it correctly, people have to access the IRS database and be able to pull up payment histories, tax histories, et cetera. Most of the employees at Treasury don't need that information, though at BF&R they do.
Okay. And I'm asking this, I know that we've all read articles about Washington and the United States Treasury, where there have been questions about whether somebody from the outside who might be a business leader has access or is seeking to have access to sensitive data, either tax returns or payment history, or as you said earlier, sometimes you have the bank information, the routing numbers for payments that have been issued. I wonder if that section of the administrative code that we have about federal tax data, whether we could expand that to state tax data or state banking information of those payments you process to increase the security to make sure you don't have a situation from within someday in the future.
Well, I'm not sure if you're aware of our pre-audit function at Treasury, so we're a little bit different than U.S. Treasury. So one of the most important aspects of the Treasury's Department authority is to pre-audit function, and that's to make sure that every single disbursement of the Commonwealth, every single payment is legal and it's correct. And that's under Section 1502 of the Fiscal Code, so that establishes our authority. So we have a Bureau of Fiscal Review. They carry out these pre-audit functions, and believe me, they are rock stars. For last fiscal year, 23-24, the Bureau received about 9.8 million payments with a total value of $184.7 billion. And of these payments, they selected, almost 10%, but it represented a monetary value of over 86%. And so what they do is they look at all kinds of criteria to make sure, again, that the payments are correct. So they identified just about 20,000 improper payments with a total dollar value of $1.7 billion. Now, from the total number of improper payments, using a pretty conservative definition, we identified $48.7 million in true savings. So that would have been like duplicate payments or payments to improper payees.
Let's pursue that discussion further. I have one final question. Many of the...
Chairman, you are well over the 5 minutes. Can we make this last question quick? 30 seconds.
Many folks at the township, city, local government level, legislature, staff have to fill out the annual statement of financial interests. Folks who have, how many folks of those 307 people in the Department of Treasury have to fill out a statement of financial interest with the State Ethics Commission?
Just about all of them. just about everybody.
throughout the department. Thank you.
All right, Chairman. Thank you, sir. Chairman Struzzi.
Thank you, Chairman Harris. Do I have any time left? No.
You're good, sir.
Thank you. So, Treasurer Garrity, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you and your staff for your willingness to travel across the Commonwealth to make sure that taxpayer monies that are owed to them and due to them are in their hands, helping families, children, prepare for the future. So I just want to applaud your efforts because I think you're truly making a difference and you truly care. And so we appreciate that. But I know we touched on the rainy day fund, and I know we've had a lot of discussion over the past 2.5 weeks about drawing down the surplus, drawing down the rainy day fund. And just to build on Representative Ecker's line of questioning, you said that you wouldn't see much of an impact initially on the state's credit rating. But if there were 0 rainy day funds left, which is a possibility given the current level of spending and the unsustainability in the outlying years, what would having 0 funds in our rainy day fund do to our credit rating?
Well, when we almost had 0 funds in our rainy day fund, I think we were 1 notch lower, actually. When I took office, we had less than 48 hours in our rainy day fund.
Wow.
So basically next to nothing.
What does that do to your credit rating, though? Because as was mentioned, having a good credit rating helps the state make money.
Right, so it probably depends on the other factors. So are you completing your budget on time? Do you have a structural deficit? What are your pensions funded at? And ours are not as well off compared to other states. So it depends on what we're doing with all those other items. But we have had, 1 upgrade since I've been in office. And I think it was specifically because of the deposits to the rainy day fund. But if we don't complete our budget on time, if we continue with the structural deficit, our pensions, like I said, they're below the national average, then I wouldn't be surprised if it went down to, AA3 like it was when I started.
Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about the effort to legalize recreational marijuana, because it confuses me to some extent on how that fits, since it's still a Schedule I narcotic, and federal banking laws pretty much say you can't deal with those types of money as far as deposits. How would legalizing recreational marijuana affect how you do business?
Well, the short answer is it really wouldn't, because right now we handle the medical marijuana.
Okay.
We keep it segregated out of an abundance of caution. So we would most likely use the exact same process. It's just that the volume would be much higher. So where the confusion is there was policy guidance issued by the DOJ, and this is maybe 6 years ago, that it said it may prohibit the banks from receiving money directly from sellers, although there has never been any enforcement. So we collect taxes through the Department of Revenue, so some banks are becoming more comfortable accepting the money, although some banks still don't want to accept the money, or assume the regulatory risk, I should say. So there's probably always going to be some hesitancy because of the mismatch, like you're talking about, between the federal government and the states that have legalized it, because they still have marijuana scheduled as a, classified as a Schedule I drug. So my opinion is that we would, handle it the same way. We would keep it segregated just out of an abundance of caution. Ohio just legalized marijuana just last year. I think it was October of last year. And they don't treat it any differently than any of their other revenue streams. We would, just because we don't want to risk the feds coming in and sweeping it up, although I don't think that would happen. So I know the governor's budget has a $540 million in revenue for FY 25-26. So just to put it in reference, the Commonwealth received just about $63 million in revenue from medical marijuana last year.
Okay, and then just one final comment, I guess, related to the unclaimed property that you mentioned. I was missing a few guitars, I think. Just saying. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here.
Thank the gentleman. Treasurer Garrity, thank you so much for being here. I'll make this quick. I echo my colleagues' sentiments with the pleasure of working with your staff. Unclaimed property is clearly very popular. in our districts and throughout our community. So we definitely appreciate that. I did want to revisit something that you said with, I think it was Representative Kutz, when we're talking about the budget outlook. Now, we'll have the budget secretary with us tomorrow, so I'm sure a lot of this is some stuff that he'll cover as well. But budget, would you agree that budgets are educated guesses?
Sure.
Okay. The reason why,
I hope they're more than,
say that again?
I think they're a little bit more than educated guesses, but.
But when we put together,
Yeah, there's assumptions that go into
right,
it, absolutely.
Okay. So you quoted the independent fiscal office with regards to, I think when you talked about where we would run out of resources, correct?
Correct.
Were quoting the independent fiscal office. Would you be surprised to know that the independent fiscal office was wrong in year 2018 to 2019? Independent fiscal office was wrong in year 2020 to 2021. The independent fiscal office was wrong in year 21-22. The independent fiscal office was wrong in year 22-23, and the independent fiscal office was wrong in 23-24 with their estimates. They estimated low, and we actually collected more revenue than the independent fiscal office said we would collect.
So that's why I also brought out the 7-year financial statement, including in Governor Shapiro's budget proposal, so that we could compare, the cash balance that my office sees versus what the IFO says, what the governor says.
Would you be shocked to know, because you were using their statistics or their projections about the claim that, we would be out of resources in 2028. My point is, they've been wrong 1, 2, 3, 4, I believe it's 5 out of the last 6 years in their estimates. They've been wrong.
I'd have to go back and look at it. So I think it's, it's challenging to predict 5 years out into the future. And so I'd have to go back and look to the degree that they were wrong. But that's why I included the governor's numbers, because, pick a set. But the governor's numbers have some additional revenue streams that the IFO does not have. So to the extent that, those revenues were better and the expenses were lower, although the expenses grow very slowly in the governor's proposal. I'm not here to debate when we hit a fiscal cliff. I just know we're going to hit one, and so I'm hoping, that we can prolong it as long as we can so that we can protect the vital programs that Pennsylvanians need.
I totally agree that we need to protect those vital programs. Would you be shocked to know that not only was the independent fiscal office wrong in 2021, 21, 22, but they were wrong by double digits? When you look at the percentage, they were off by double digits.
No, I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay. I bring that up because I agree with you that 5 years of projections is hard to do. I think we need to keep that in context when we're actually talking about running out of money, recessions, cliffs, and all of these things. I think we have to be careful when we say those terms, because people take those terms and run with them based off of more than an educated guess, but projections. And what we've seen from our own independent fiscal office is that I believe 5 out of the 6 years, they were wrong with regards to those projections.
I will note that, Mr. Chair, in 25-26, the governor says that he's tapping into the rainy day fund by $1.6 billion. That's not my numbers. And then the governor says he's tapping into again in 26-27, so it'll be about half, 3.9.
Totally agree. I'm talking about independent fiscal. Everybody uses them. I think those folks are great, and they do the best job they can. I do just want to point out that they've been wrong 5 out of the last 6 years with their estimations.
Duly noted.
In addition to that, just last night, our president, when he gave his State of the Union address, said that America is entering the golden age. His exact words were, "The golden age of America has only just begun." He also talked about how under his presidency, America would have the best economy in the world. So which one is wrong? Is President Trump wrong for saying that we're going to have the best economy, or is the Independent Fiscal Office and our documents wrong with regards to projection? Because if President Trump is correct and we do have this golden age, this amazing economy, that means that our PIT is going to be up and our collections on that. That means our collections on business taxes is going to be up, and therefore there would not be a recession nor a fiscal cliff for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So both of those statements can't survive together. Either the President of the United States is right and that America is going to be in the golden age and he's going to provide the best economy in the world, or Pennsylvania has a fiscal cliff that we need to get ready for. I'm just trying to figure out which one is correct.
Well, I know what I'm betting on.
Which one? I don't know. I mean,
The better one.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I'm just saying, the Independent Fiscal Office has been wrong 5 of the 6 years. The president says we're going to have an amazing economy. If we have an amazing economy, then we shouldn't be talking about a fiscal cliff. We shouldn't be talking about a recession, because if this economy was as good as what we've seen in the last several years here in Pennsylvania, if that economy is as good as it was the last 4 years, there will be no recession, there will be no fiscal cliff, and we will continue to outperform the wrong Independent Fiscal Office. That's all I'm saying. Would you agree? Don't answer it. I don't want you to don't answer it. All right. I appreciate the Treasurer for being here. We thank you. We thank your staff for all of the great work, and I sincerely mean that, the great work that you all do here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And as the Treasurer said, go to her website and see if you have unclaimed, what's the website again for unclaimed property?
patreasury.gov/unclaimed property.
See if you got unclaimed property on the Treasurer's website. And today, that will end our budget hearings for today. We'll be back here tomorrow with your counterpart. The Auditor General will be here at 10 a.m. right here for our last day.
Thank you, Chairman.
I'm about to say, y'all ain't gonna clap. Our last day of budget hearings. Thank you all so much. Have a good day.